So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Accelerator membership. I love the energy this morning. I'm feeling like start energy.
Yes.
Yes, that's right. And you see, we all coordinated, me and E. Marie and Quentin, we got our shirts on and make success a habit, so we're starting strong. In fact, we will get started last year, ran into some problems with our website. So we're going to get these shirts. We have about five different very empowering quotes. We're going to get these up available for you if you would like to purchase one. People love them when we're walking through the supermarket. Everybody's trying to read my shirt and get some motivation. So we'll get these available for you in the next month. That said, we're going to get started with the lesson. And since some of you are fairly new with us, so let me go over the normal. Well, I don't know if I really want to go over our normal flow because we're doing it slightly different this month. But typically, we start the month with a new training, and and we actually just teach on that training. And the second week of the month, we actually break that training down on the key concepts. And then the third week of the month, we mastermind to make sure that you get an understanding, not only an understanding, but internalize the lesson. And then on the fourth week, we mastermind, but the focus is on implementation. This month's a little different. We're going to be teaching each week. It's just the nature of this lesson. But we will have 30 plus minutes each week to mastermind and get feedback from you. So it'll be somewhat different and but in many ways the same. You're gonna because we really like to have your participation. So that being said, we're gonna pick up on the lesson which is entitled The Seven Levels of Mastery. We're also entitling the lesson The Seven Levels of Conscious Awareness. And in fact, I wanted to say a few things because the more I keep thinking into conscious awareness, what are we talking about? What we're really talking about is the fact that many of the challenges we have are because we're not consciously aware of other options. We get very, what do they call it when you are what do you call it, Q, when you get really narrow vision? There's a term for that.
Like tunnel vision.
Tunnel vision, exactly, where your vision is so tunnel that you can't see all the other options out there. And so you feel compelled to do what you do. And so when we talk about conscious awareness, that's what we're really talking about. There's obviously more than seven ways to be conscious, but we're focusing on seven this week or this month. We're focusing on the animal level, which is about being reactive. We're focusing on the mass level, which is about following the crowd or what you always do. We're focusing on the level of aspiration, where you want to do better, but it's just a thought. It's just a plan. You're not really stepping out into it. And we're talking about the level of individual awareness, where you decide if it's to be, it's up to me, and you're gonna step out. We're talking about what you're going to do. And there's three others. I'll just say, well, let me just go. I guess since I've started this, the other three are the level of commitment. Because once you step out, all hell's going to break loose. Let me go ahead and warn you if you don't already know. And so you got to get to that level of conscious awareness about commitment is what it takes. And then there's experience. If we stay committed for something long enough, we're going to get the experience to reach the top level, which is mastery. So these are the levels we're going through today. We're going to go through a couple of them today, and each week we'll be adding a few more. So to start with, last week we left off at the animal level of awareness, if for those of you that were here. And I hear a little background, a little something in somebody's background. If maybe you can mute yourself. I don't know where. Let me see. It seems like it might be you, Tracy. I'm not picking on you. There you go. Okay. But the animal level, if you remember, is the lowest level of awareness. And I want to start by giving you an example of someone that's actually not just visiting that level, not even, I would say, camping out. They're actually living at this level. And this is a friend of mine. Him and his wife went on a vacation one year. And In the hotel, as they're trying to sleep, his wife is having trouble sleeping because there's too much noise next door. The TV's too loud. And so they call the front desk and they ask, can you ask the person next door to cut the TV down a bit, right? And so a couple of minutes later, they hear somebody knocking at the door next to them, and they're pretty loud. The knock is pretty loud. And a few minutes after that, they actually answer the door. Now, you said we couldn't hear anything the receptionist was telling them. Why? Because all they can hear with this guy shouting and cussing and just going completely off, full out rage attack. So he actually slams the door. And so the lady leaves, and about another 3 or 4 minutes, she comes back and they hear another knock at the door. This time it's the receptionist with the police because, she's not going to deal with being sweared at. And she brings the police, and the police starts telling the guy, listen, you got one chance to figure this out or you're going to be arrested. What does he do? He's still going off. And then his wife comes to the door, tries to calm things down. She pretty much kind of drags him. She knows this guy, right? She lives with him in this level of awareness. She pulls him back in and she tells the police, hey, he's going to be good. And she shuts the door. And then this guy is still, my friend said they could still hear him next door shouting and screaming and just pacing back and forth in the room. He just couldn't control his rage, even though the police was there telling him to be quiet or he's going to be arrested. The next morning, they say he's still upset. He checks out, slams the door. He's moaning and groaning all the way down the hall. Now think about that. How crazy is that? He's not camping out. He's surely not visiting the animal level. He's actually living at the animal level, at least during this vacation. See, he couldn't see any other options for him to do anything else. This was tunnel vision. His level of awareness was just in this, was so narrow. He didn't see all the other options he could have taken. See, when you've got no ability to choose your reaction, you can't be proactive. You can only be reactive. My question to you to start this morning, why would anybody want to live that way?
Exactly. It's so true. And just think, at that level of awareness, I mean, what are you bringing into your primary love relationships, right? You know, think of that wife even. One of our mentors used to be with the Guardian Angels out of New York City. And if you don't know, that was a volunteer group known for patrolling city streets and subways so they could deter violent crime. They mentored youth and would help the homeless. And they would all wear these distinctive red berets, right, to promote safety and unity. Anyhow, he said they would often find themselves in a new city patrolling late at night and usually around 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. As they would go through the dark alleyways of the city, they would see homeless people. And a lot of times, those homeless people would be going through the dumpster and tearing through garbage bags and boxes and containers and pulling out food out of the garbage and eating. They called it dumpster diving, right? And if you look at these people in judgment, you would think, well, they got to be out of their minds, right? Why would anyone do such a thing? Right? Like, oh my goodness, how disgusting, and on, right? Mm-hmm. All of this judgment. But he said he spent some time getting to know the people on the street. And, as he was living there and getting to know the people on the street, because he was living there as a guardian angel, he was on patrol in a neighborhood and would stay in that neighborhood for 6 months or more, for example. So with that amount of time, he would get to know the people. He'd get to know even the drug dealers, right? He'd get to know the good and the bad. He'd get to know everyone. And what he came to find out is that a lot of the homeless people were actually highly educated people. Some of them even had doctorate degrees. So here's the point here. If you think awareness and education are connected, think again, because they are not.
Yeah, really. I mean, that would be a natural thought, I would think. But as Q was saying, when you really understand this material, education has nothing to do with it. I mean, you could have somebody who's highly educated, even wealth has nothing to do with it. I know people that maybe live in Beverly Hills, or Jupiter Beach resort areas where you presume that they have money, right? You don't get to live there for free. And many of them still possess that type of behavior, animal level behavior, reactive behavior. And I've learned that what happens to a lot of these people was there was a trigger. Maybe it was a divorce, maybe they lost a job, went into bankruptcy, something happened to them. And they lacked the level of awareness to process that. They couldn't process it the way that, in many cases, would have given them, moved them out to the higher level of awareness. Many people processed it through drugs, through alcohol, or, because that certainly has nothing to do with money, right? Or education. I was a drug and alcohol counselor. There's many educated, rich drug and, people with drug and alcohol abuse. So imagine this could lead to very bad lifestyles, life choices over time. Imagine how bad a person's life has to be where they might end up homeless or living underneath a bridge, as Q was describing, sleeping in the park. Because those people, we know they have families. They didn't come into this earth by themselves. At one point in time, their life, and they had somebody who loved them. Think about it, there would be no way that you, me, Q, E. Marie, any of us on this call, that we could be homeless tonight. I mean, if you lost all your money, you've got friends, you've got family that would instantly that would take out, lift you up in some way. No questions asked. But imagine some of these people at very low animal levels of awareness, they burnt every bridge and every relationship to the degree they've got no options, no options. They don't have anybody that would offer support. Imagine that lower level of awareness. And sadly, many of these people, they've fallen into mental illness, and again, we're not talking about judging these people. You'd get the lesson wrong. It's not about judgment. Even on yourself, if you as you find as we go through this, we all visit the animal level awareness several times a day, probably. But we want you to move into the opportunity with other people of having empathy and compassion for people and understanding. So really, when you lose control in this lower level of awareness, what happens is people can get trapped there unless they actually learn how to interrupt this level of awareness, start understanding it, intervene, have some intervention for themselves or someone else that can just stop them long enough to pull them out of this environment and can help them move up to another level of awareness. Because you can literally get stuck there. People get stuck there. We can get stuck there. We may need some help to move up. And that's what these training, especially this month, is all about, is how do we move to the next level of awareness in the key areas of our life.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And it's really important, and on that topic, what we're also talking about underneath that is we're talking about emotions as being automatic responses. And you'll hear that a lot. And they're learned, really, emotions. They're learned programs that we've picked up along the way. And people don't think that emotions are learned, and they are. They can be habits. I talk to clients all the time. I tell them that emotions can be habits. Somebody can be habitually mad all the time, right? Have you ever known anyone like that? Right? People can be habitually sad all the time, right? And that turns into what we call depression in a lot of cases, right? So they are learned, right? And that's what keeps them locked there. And the thinking that goes with it, right? That gentleman Jerry talked about, a rageaholic produces, right? That produces another rageaholic, right? That produces another person who's always mad and pissed off at the world, right? Until someone breaks the cycle, right? I wonder how many doors were slammed in that guy's life when he was a kid. See, by operating from awareness and understanding, even when someone is showing up and presenting themselves in one of the worst ways, you can have compassion for them, right? You can find a place to recognize and maybe separate their being from their behavior. I know in coaching, a concept that we subscribe to is thinking about what their positive intent is. And in this idea, in this concept, I should say, the idea is that every behavior started as or has some type of positive intent behind it. Now, how they express it might be totally right. They could be way off, right? But there is a positive intent underneath, or at least it started at. And in thinking in this way, in maybe one of its highest forms, it introduces to us an opportunity for us to gain understanding, to have compassion and empathy, and recognize that is doing the very best they can with what they have, right? And what they're aware of. Now, they may know better, right? Some of them know better. Like this Jerry was talking about. I'm sure he knew better than to slam the door. And these people knew better than to take drugs or, fill in the blank, but they lack the awareness to do what they know. I think all of us have been there, right? At some point or another. Anyone who's ever wanted to, let's just say lose weight, right? Anyone who's ever wanted to lose weight, that's a good example, right? Especially with us still being in the beginning of a new year, right? New Year's resolutions. We know when we're sitting on the couch with a gallon of butter pecan or Rocky Road ice cream, and we're saying, you know what, a little bit of ice cream never hurt nobody, right? We know it's not producing the results that we want or we claim we're committed to, but we lack the awareness to export that knowing. Because at this point, many of us know that it's not about what you know. It's about what you put into practice. By the way, the only real way to be sure you know something is by seeing the results. So anyways, what do we do instead of doing what we know, though? What do? We join a gym, we pay the membership, we pay the fee every single month, and then, yep, you guessed it, never go, right? We just can't quite do it, right? It's like that, that I've heard, and I was saying is that the heaviest weight in the gym is the front door, right? And that's so true, right? You got to get up and do it, right? So even though we know how to do it, we've got the new shoes, we've got the workout clothes that match and they're color coordinated or whatever the case may be. We've paid the money for the membership and nothing.
That's right. That's right. And yet they're still not doing what they claim they want to do for their life. So for people who are in that lower level of awareness, this animal level, it's a great opportunity for us to have and develop compassion for them, because we don't want to and we don't want to judge them. See, there's us growing to a level of awareness, to a higher level, and then there's us being able to recognize people who are stuck in a lower level of awareness. And for us to be agents of change in their lives, to be what we call awakener, if you will, to awaken somebody that's stuck in a state of ignorance. Sounds like a bad word, but that's what it is, right? It simply means they don't know. Then they don't see the other options. See, you must ground yourself. The key here, though, is you must ground yourself first and then help other people. And again, I tell you, this was one of the most important lessons that we've taught for me, because I found it so empowering to be able to recognize where I'm at in a particular area of my life or a particular phase of my life. What level am I making decisions from? What is my awareness? When you awaken, and we'll all get to another level of awareness here in this training this month, But when you awaken from this animal level of awareness, where what we're doing is waking from, we're stopping to blame people because that's what the animal level of awareness is about. I'm sure that gentleman in the hotel felt like that receptionist had pissed him off, and the next door neighbors, they were in big trouble. He was blaming everybody else. And we like to say that if people can make you mad, sad, or glad,
Right.
you've been had. Okay. That's all that boils to. In fact, you have given away your responsibility for your own attitude. When you surrender that special gift, your ability to choose your attitude in between that stimulus and response that we talked about last week, when you give that to somebody else or something else, you have you have disempowered yourself. You've been had.
Yeah. You do disempower yourself. And what is it really about? Right? The total opposite is what we want. It's about empowering yourself and taking that back and not being a victim of condition or circumstances and not feeling that you're blaming other people. Right? When we awaken from that, the next level of is this mass level of conscious awareness. Right? This is where we follow the crowd, right? That herd mentality. That's what it is. It's the herd mentality. It's seeing what other people are doing and thinking, and there's no way they can all be wrong, right? Safety in numbers. There go my friends, right? There goes my family, my coworkers, my significant other, the cool kids, right? When we were younger, the people I want to be like. And there we go, right along with them. We've been programmed with the idea that there is safety in numbers. It's interesting that every one of these levels of awareness have beliefs that most of us have been programmed with to support us staying stuck in them. Certainly, they can't all be wrong, right? That's the question we ask, right? When we're in that herd mentality, like this mass level. There's safety in numbers, but actually, they can all be wrong. And I'm going to show you here. Look how many times in history, pretty much 100% of people have been wrong. One of my favorite examples is the world was flat for a long time, wasn't it? And I know there's still some what they call flat earthers, right, that still believe that the earth's flat. But for the most part, there was a good portion of people back in the day that believed it. And everyone was convinced and happy. And we all agreed that the world is flat, right? At least most of us. So it was. And then somebody comes around and says, you know what? It's round. And what do? They tie them up and probably burn them, right? For coming out with this outlandish idea, right? And some at that, right? Because it sounds crazy to us to think about that now, but there were enough people, even 500 years ago, that still believed that the earth was flat. It's in the grand scheme of things, it's only 500 years ago. And to put that into perspective, it was only about 123 years ago when the Wright brothers first flew a plane in the air, right? Not a huge gap. And that's not the only one, to be honest. That's not the only one. There are plenty of other examples. Years ago, they thought the earth was the center of the universe, right? Now, not even close. It's so massive, we can't even track it, right? With our human understanding at this point, right? Bloodletting, was used for a number of issues in patients and likely did more harm than good in most cases, where they just drain people's blood out, right? For a number of ailments. And they thought that was going to heal them because of something in their blood that needed to be balanced out, right? They even say that may have contributed to George Washington's death, his bloodletting. They thought certain diseases were from bad air, right? Until germ theory came around, right? They didn't know about germs. They just said, oh, yeah, you got some bad air. right? They thought complex life could appear out of thin air without rhyme or reason. Like an example of that is like maggots on meat. They didn't know about, the flies coming and dropping the larvae and things like that. They're just like, yep, some complex life can just appear. Maggots, right? And believe this, there's plenty of things that almost 100%, if not 100% of people believe right now today that we are wrong about, right? Just like them. And we don't know what they are yet, but they'll become apparent in the future. And here's the thing, they'll fiercely fight for it and defend it right now. But here's the question that we ask. They can't all be wrong, can they? Well, yes, it can.
Yes, they can. I think what we want to do is we want to look at those areas of our life, those 5 areas, and ask where are we at when it comes to our health? Where are we at when it comes to our finances? What level are we with when it comes to our spirituality? Just go through the areas, the key areas of life, and ask where are you at? I remember watching the news, probably all of us actually do, about 15, 20 years ago, and seeing highly educated people with doctorate degrees, engineers, scientists, researchers, people with MBAs. And this is probably one of the biggest news stories in American business history. And they were all being interviewed on TV, and they were all crying. Why? Because they were financially wiped out because of this mass level of awareness mentality. I mean, many of them lost their homes because they had taken all their retirement investment money and remortgaged their houses and took second mortgages against their houses so that they can get enough money, and they were going to invest it all into, not going to, did invest one stock, their company's stock. How many of you guys remember Enron?
Yep.
A lot of people went broke. When the reporters were asking them, why did you take all your money and put it into one stock? Every single one of them, without fail, said this. Everybody else was doing it. They said it didn't seem like it was wrong. In fact, for a while, it was very right because you couldn't go wrong. You'd buy stock today and it would continue to go up and up and up. Now, even with all that education, with all those examples of the Great Depression and every financial collapse between the 30s and the 1990s, with all those examples, every company had crashed. We had seen companies crash and burn. We've seen people who got burnt in these crashes. The people who got burnt the most were the people who did exactly what they did, put all the money into one thing. We know the number one rule to investment is diversification, and they knew that, but they still lacked the level of awareness. They were tunnel vision. They were not aware of all the other options, and they got wiped out as a result of that. And the funny thing is, who actually knows who started that idea? It could have been the janitor who started it, as far as anybody knows. Who knows who started the idea of putting all your money into the company stock because you're going to be a millionaire, right? Who started that? But when you see people, when you see other people doing something, we call that social proof. It has strong influence in people's minds. It's actually called the herd mentality. I don't want to miss out. That fear of missing out. A friend of mine who used to sell fish at this particular market, he said years ago, he was telling me, he said, if we had nobody in our area where we were selling fish, nobody would come over. But if we could get a group, everybody would come over and just join that group. A few of you guys go outside and look at a street light, just stare at the street light. Everybody would start staring at the street light with you. He said, you would have thought they were giving things away. So many people came over. That's the mass mentality. That's the second level.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. That was me. I've known some promoters. I've got some friends who are promoters for clubs and things like that. And that's one of the things that they do. They invite as many as people as they want, right, for free to their club and to their section of the club, and they've got bottles and whatever for free, cheap bottles for free. And the people on the outside will see that, wow, there's so many people in that club, right? And that brings in more people, which is why they're allowed a budget to have bottles for free and invite as many as they want to drink for free and all those things, so that the people on the outside can see, wow, that must be the spot to go to tonight. There's 50 people in there, right? Or 100 people or whatever it is, and that brings more people in. So really interesting, that mass level of awareness, that herd mentality, and that's the thought, is there must be something over there, right? They can't all be wrong. Very interesting and so true. Here we can see at a level of awareness, that story that Jerry mentioned, in our financial life, right? Where someone follows the crowd, right? Or a lot of someone's really following the crowd. Again, we said that there's a language to all of these levels. The animal level of awareness, the language pattern is, see what you made me do, right? You really upset me. Those kind of things. It's the blame game, as Jerry mentioned. You wake up in the morning, you look in the mirror, and you say, who's the matter with me today? Who's the matter with me today? Because it certainly can't be me. It got to be somebody or something else, right? When you go to the animal level of awareness, the language of the animal level of awareness is just kind of like sheep. It's just following the crowd.
The herd, yeah.
And that mass level, especially following the crowd. One of the realizations was that spiritual life, right? I grew up, born and raised in church, as E. Marie can attest to, the same church my mom went to as a little girl, my grandma, my grandpa, right? And we would go to church and we would never miss. We didn't just go like some people on every Christmas or Easter. We went all the other 50 weeks of the year too, right? And that's good, but for a long time, I didn't really want to go, right? I was what I would call a regular teenager. I was like, man, I want to go. Boring, right? And I just went because my mom made me go. And as I grew older and I started to study and started to grow, and I think anybody who begins a serious study in personal growth steps into, the spiritual questions, the God questions, you step into the spiritual growth questions, right? And you begin to wonder, right? There's a bigger thing than me growing me. There's something inside of me that's calling me forward. What is that? Right? We begin that spiritual quest. And as you go down that rabbit hole, you start to look for spiritual growth and you start asking God the questions and looking for the answers. And sometimes we're asking the questions, but not taking any action or really doing anything about it. Right? Faith without works is dead. Sometimes you hear people say things like, God's in the book, right? You can open up the Bible and there he is. God is on your knees. You can get on your knees right now and God's right there. You can pray right now. Nobody's stopping you. You can go to church. You can go to the Bible. There's all kinds of opportunities for me to really find God. But instead, I was just following my old model of doing what I've always done. But when I searched, right, myself, I found him. And now I still go to that church, right? But I know why I'm going. And it's my choice.
All right. Good job, Marie. E. Marie. Yeah. Sometimes when we're following the crowd, it's not that we're following the crowd in their current environment. We're following the crowd mentality that we've been programmed into. Right? The Q was kind of describing a little bit of that. Fortunately, he figured it out. But, when you're in the mass level, you're just doing what you've always done. That's another way of following the crowd. So you can follow the crowd in two ways. It's kind of following the crowd in their current behavior and actions, the things that are going on around us and in us today. And another way is just following the crowd that we doing what we've always done, in other words, is a mass mentality type approach as well. And what's actually interesting about there's a comfort and a safety and a familiarity in being with the crowd, isn't there? I mean, if somebody tries to leave, everybody pulls them back. Why? Because there's safety in numbers. So you don't want anybody to leave. I mean, it's like that crab example that we talked about, the crabs in the bucket last week. One tries to get out and another pulls them down. And I was thinking about that, and it reminded me of when I was in the Air Force. I went in the Air Force when I was 17, halfway through my high school year. I mean, I graduated early, not because I was an honor student, just did. And I went straight to the Air Force. And so I was one of the younger people in my group. And when I was in technical training, working on what would be my for the next 4 years, I seen these leaders in the Air Force. They were in technical training as well, but they were called ropes. They were leaders in our groups. And their level of leadership was represented by a certain rope. I think red was the lower level and green was the top level. Yellow was in between. I guess kind of like the stoplights, right? And I started thinking to myself, I wouldn't mind becoming a rope. I think I would like to join the leadership group. Now, the group I hung out with, though, was not the leadership group. My buddies, they drank a little bit. They smoked a lot of dope. And so that was my group. And I happened to mention it to them one evening while we were sitting around getting high. And they literally told me, they said, Jerry, if you join the ropes, you cannot hang with us. Okay. That's just it. And, I thought, well, hey guys, I didn't say I was joining the ropes. I said I was thinking about it. And that was the end of the thought process for me. And these are some of my best buds today, even. I got a couple of guys, we've been friends and I still tease them. I said, listen, it's so good I got away from you guys for a minute because I was born to be a leader. But what was happening? I was following my crowd. When you look at it, they didn't want me to get out of the bucket. And I think that even that's true for a lot of us. There's one part of us that wants to do something great, and then there's another part of us calling us to stay put. You got to stay where you are. Because why? Because there's safety keeping things as they are.
Yeah, that's so true. I once heard a story that came from the book by Phil Robertson, I believe his name is, from the show Duck Dynasty. I guess that's the dad. I've never seen the show itself, but I've heard of it, of course. But I hear it's a great book. In the book, he talks about before his conversion into Christianity, the life before that and the life after. And he said that he was out drinking and just doing the most, right? He's fooling around on his wife. He was basically describing himself as being a no good lowlife. And he knew it. This is him saying these things. But that's who he was, and he owned it. He knew it. Everyone who knew him knew it. And nobody was going to tell him anything different or anything about it, right? Or try to correct him. Then, when he made the decision to change his life and commit his life to Christ, all of his old friends just fought him on it, right? They fought to take him down and bring him back, right? To the herd, right? Because sometimes when you change for the better, it shows others around you their own faults. He tells a story of how his friends showed up one day and they said, hey, come on, we're going to go fishing today. And it was the weekend. It was a Saturday, right? And he thought, well, I don't not want to go, right? So he said, all right, cool, I'll go, right? And then he said, hold up, wait. Drinking alcohol at this moment, right? So is there water in the pool? And they said, oh, yeah, sure, of course, right? He goes off, and sure enough, they get out on the river. They're doing their thing. They're fishing, and they're there for a while, and they're hours away from home, right? He's thirsty. He opens up the cooler, and all that's there is beer. And he's like, how could I be so dumb, right? Of course they lied to me. They're liars. They're a bunch of drunks. Of course. He says, I was running around with liars, right? I was a liar. I was a drunk. And now I was shocked that they were lying and I fell for it. Right? So in that herd mentality, a lot of times their first reaction is to kind of keep you in, right? And then their next reaction is to shun you and reject you. We all know what that sounds like. Oh, you're trying to start a business now, right? Oh, you've got a business now. You're getting that money now, huh? You can't hang around with us broke folks, right? Oh, you've been working out? You trying to get in shape? No. Oh, you're looking too good to hang out with us now, right?
And they say
You don't want to be seen with us, right? You don't want the drama and the gossip like we always do. Oh no, you're too good for us now, aren't you? Right? It's so common, isn't it? And I've been through that. I think anyone who set out to do something great has been through this, right? It's just a part of it. There's an appeal for us to kind of follow the masses, right? We don't want to be the outsider. There is an appeal for us to follow the crowd. Again, you want to be gentle on yourself as you look at these 5 areas of your life. When you think of mass consciousness, you might not think of it even in the spiritual life, for example, right? You might say, well, I don't see how you can live your life at mass level of consciousness, spirituality in the spiritual realm, spiritually, but you can live your life at the mass level in any of these areas. Someone close to me just got out of what he calls a cult, and he was in it for years because he was just following what everyone else around him was doing spiritually. You follow it with everyone else because you don't want to be the odd one out. They say, it's not a cult. Don't believe what the other's saying. It's not a cult. We're just different, right? Stick with it and say the prayer this way, right? And you do it this way, right? And you cut off family and friends that are not a part of our group, right? Don't talk to anyone outside of this. And you know what else? You don't ask any questions. And if you feel the need to ask a question, you should be ashamed of yourself. And you find yourself stuck spiritually, right? Or if to identify at these lower levels of awareness in any level of your life, the way you identify it is you are stuck, right? If you're not growing, there's an awareness issue, right? Because the essence of who you are as a spiritual being is seeking fuller life. You're always seeking fuller expression and expansion. You will always want to be, do, or have more. So you find yourself in struggle, not expressing yourself more fully. Or if you find yourself in acceptance, you just kind of like, okay, I like things just the way they are. And that's a great indication that there's an opportunity for you to move to another level of awareness, because we're built for growth and expansion. So far, we've covered the animal level of awareness and the mass level of awareness. And this is a great spot for us to stop today, because these two are the lower levels, right? So next week, what we'll do is we're going to get into the start of transitioning into the higher levels. So you definitely won't want to miss that one. And like we always say, don't grow alone, right? Invite someone you care about. So this has been lesson 2 of the 7 levels of mastery, also known as the 7 levels of leadership. So we have about 10 minutes, and we can start with Tracy, because I know you had your hand up. But so if you have a question or comment, you can start with that. And then what we'll do is everyone just take 30 seconds and tell us what your biggest takeaway is, either from today's lesson or, a combination between last week and today's, if you were here for both. So go ahead, Tracy.
All right. I had a question. As I was listening to the discussion about the animal level and the mass level of awareness, I have that people operating in the animal level either living there by choice. These can be prominent people who, to me, actively seek people in the mass level mentality or level of awareness so that they can lead them, manipulate them. And sometimes I've found, as you mentioned, it's in cults. Sometimes it can be in national politics. Everyone, as it was stated, that lives in the animal level, sometimes it benefits them, especially when it comes to manipulating the minds of those who live at the mass awareness level. What is your opinion about that? Because I
Yeah.
see that it works in tandem. So I just wondered.
Yeah, yeah, you're spot on. Also, it froze a little bit. Can you guys still hear me? At least on
Yeah.
my end, it froze. Okay, yeah. So I would agree in most cases, and also we're going to get more into that because you actually can flow back and forth through these levels, right? And we're going to get more into that as these trainings go on over the next couple of weeks. So yes, you can bounce back and forth, and of course, someone in that. What do they say? Misery loves company, right?
Yeah.
So misery loves company. Of course, they want you to be there with them, right? That's why gossip works, right? That's why you can get groups of people to do things that you wouldn't imagine doing if you're at a different level. You're like, what? And you convince other people to help you do it, right? So yeah, definitely. That's a great there, Tracy.
And the last thing, my takeaway was this was a very interesting conversation. I appreciate it. Some people, though, that are at the animal level of awareness, they're not there because no one is there to help them. Because a lot of homeless people, and all animal level people are not homeless. Some people may live in castles. But anyway,
Hmm.
discussing the homeless people, many animal awareness level homeless people have options. They have people who are willing to help them, but they have lost trust. You have to have trust to be able to move to another level. They've been burned by so many other people. And so there's a risk in for them to even attempt to leave. And some of them have given up. So that is my last comment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. I was going to say that's real. That's what I was speaking of in the beginning. It's all about your awareness of other options, and they've lost awareness of options available to them. So if you option, you're forced to choose what you do see. So you're exactly right.
Yep, definitely. Okay. Laura?
Yes. Did you not mention that one of the levels of awareness was
Yeah, we
Connection.
haven't
okay?
gotten to the breakdown of that one yet, but yeah, Jerry did mention that's one of those levels. Yes.
Okay. Based on what you said, even though you haven't gone through it, just knowing me and how I react to things, I feel that's my takeaway. I feel that's where I am because I have to, I decide what's best for me, no matter what is presented. If it's not best for me, I don't care what the masses do. If it's not going to benefit me and help me to do better, grow, I'm going to hold out. It has to benefit me. That's the way I've gone my life, even not even knowing where I was at, but I am an individualist.
Hmm.
So that's my
Nice.
take.
Good stuff. Yeah, you're gonna love it. Yep. Okay, who's next? 30 seconds. What's your biggest takeaway so far? Go ahead, Roshan. I know you want to talk. I can see you.
Crazy. I didn't want to jump ahead like Laura. I was just kind of thinking, going to this lesson, I believe 2 years ago, which is crazy thinking about it. But I believe I have switched aspiration to individual.
Yeah.
Anyway, I will say that, well, what you said about if you're not growing to an awareness issue, that stuck to me, and it's the truth, right? Because we're not self-aware, basically where we are, where we want to be, and meaning that we're not really, I guess, taking the steps in order to get the life that we want. And then And then yeah, and then basically the part where you said that we're programmed thinking that there is a safety in numbers.
Yeah. There could be problems in numbers, right?
Right.
Yeah, for sure, sure.
I'll say something. I just was
Yeah.
thinking about when we had this pandemic, it looked like everybody was going to the shots, this and that. And I never been so confused in my life. I said, what? And I was undecided. And I was looking at what people were doing in my church, who did this. And I was almost getting, well, that person's doing it. Certain people I look at and I say, well, they're doing it. It must be okay. But something kept holding me back. I said, no, no. From what I kept thinking, hey, it might not work for me. Some reason when it came to that, you talking about taking something in your arm and this and that. Some reason I was held back and I said, no, it might not be me. And I'm glad I'm not in a situation where I have to lose my job. You hear the people that were nurses and all kinds of, they even rejected and they had, so I was swayed and I'm just glad I made the decision I did. I was almost getting that mentality of certain people I know, well, they're doing it, it must be okay. And I was feeling safe. I was going to, but something stopped me. And I'm just glad I made the decision I did. It just made me look at the level where I was at. It was almost like, going with the crowd, and I said, no. I said, what's going to happen to me? I'm the one going to have to go through it. I started thinking all this stuff and I pulled back and I'm glad I just made the decision I did.
Sure, sure. And that's what matters, right? And there's, that's a good example of, which mass, right? Because there's a mass that might be for something and there's a mass that's against something. So either way, we might be following one of those masses, right? So no, but that was great. Thanks for sharing. Who's next? I know we're at the hour. I'm good to stick around. If you do have to go, feel free because we are at the hour. But I would love to hear from the rest of you if you have something to share for us.
Hi, it's Akira. Can everybody hear me now?
Yes.
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 Good morning. First of all, just this was really helpful in processing some of my behaviors. Just made me more introspective in a lot of ways. I'm very much an individually minded thinker, but when it comes to killing habits and just doing better in the subconscious life, like the part of me nobody sees, I realize, oh no, I might have some animalistic tendencies, just the way that I'm aware of things that need to change, but don't always have the capacity to move into action. So that was good to be able to put a name on that. And then secondly, just E. Marie knows, and maybe some people that were on here from our church are aware, but I exited a 7-year abusive marriage, and finally the divorce went through in October. But since leaving that, I've had to process a lot about what in the world did I live in for 7 years. It was highly abusive. It was very physically violent, and I was raised with love. You wouldn't look at me and think that I would, that. But I started to, well, what kind of mental programming does a person have to undergo to tolerate that? And what kind of person does it take to do those things? And so when that angry guy at the hotel was being described, I realized that some kind of way, people who live in the animalistic do tend to have this crazy sense of control over the people in their environment. The wife in that situation was trying to keep everything under control, but not rock the boat with her angry husband. And I'm sure she didn't like living at that level all the time, but she'd adjusted to it. And so I realized that narcissists tend to have this weird balance between controlling everybody around them while getting to live at the animalistic level. And it's actually quite frightening, but that having a name for that, well, besides the narcissist, besides the abuser, that was also very helpful. How I see that there are people who like living at that level and never intend change, regardless of how wounded they might have been in their youth or in their past. for some people it is a choice, and they like it because it helps them control everybody around them. So those are my takeaways.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing.
Yeah, thanks for great takeaways. Great takeaways. Yeah. How about Deborah, Trisha?
I
Yvonne?
apologize. I unfortunately am operational today. I'm in work and I've been stepping in and out. And what was the question?
No, just any takeaways or what you got out of the session today.
Okay, let me tell you, dealing with, I am an activity leadership over a nursing clinic. Okay, we recruit broken people, and I have out of about 4 staff members that are living at this level, and the amount of compassion, the amount of, I think I couldn't identify it. I wouldn't have said animal level, but it takes a good bit of compassion and stuff to deal with all of the personnel issues that take you away from the everyday operational work that you have to do. And you find yourself getting behind and frustrated, but you also are trying to give them the tools that they need to come up to what they need to, because you just can't fire them. It's a different way of when you're in this, you don't fire people, you have to develop them. You're forced, you're stuck with them. They're like your Siamese twin. So you develop them because, like my leadership tells me, if they stay amongst us, they will be going to war with you. Can you imagine that on the battlefield?
Ooh.
Okay. So we don't fire.
This is going to be a great opportunity to get some additional tools. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm
great.
sure I need it. We look forward to it.
That's the situation. And then it's not like the civilian sector, they get into trouble. If they get into trouble in the streets, it's our issue. I have people to court. I have taken people to appointments. I have said you will be evaluated. It is knowing, and a lot of them is generational. So they don't know how to identify it themselves. They live within this tunnel vision. That's all they know.
Are
And
you
not
able
aware. Not aware at all.
Are you able to invite them to any of these trainings?
No, it's technically a duty.
Okay.
So no, I can't.
Okay.
So I kind of close myself off in the office. I may jump out every now and then. I can't, but they're to do what they're doing.
Well, we're glad you're here.
Yes.
Definitely come back.
Welcome.
Yep, welcome. Okay. Patricia.
Patsy,
What's that?
you're muted.
You're muted.
Okay. What I got from this is my first time, and I'm new to all of this, but all this seems to revolve around my life, period. I'm grasping it to my past, and this is a new year, like you were saying, Q. I'm trying to grasp it and go ahead on and move forward and do something positive, because I realize that I've been a animal mode following. All right, so it's enlightened me a lot from being my first time on and listening. I see a lot of topics that I can relate to, and I'm hoping to get a lot from it. I've written down so much, a page full of stuff that I can refer back to, as well as listen to Bishop Omega, Lady Donna, and Dame Marie. It's just a lot. So I appreciate the opportunity of Dame Marie inviting me, and hopefully I can progress the future instead of reflecting back in the past and just being stuck there. Okay? Thank you for this opportunity of having me talk.
Hey, love it.
Great. Yep. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Who did I miss? Did Yvonne go? Annie?
Yes, hi, this is Bonnie. I listened to the program. I enjoyed the session today, and so many set things went through my mind. of interacting with the people, joining groups and what have you. I thought about what one of the young ladies was saying about she didn't decide not to take the COVID test, COVID needle. Okay, anyway, my point is that I did decide to take it, but I said, well, you know what? I'm taking it in the name of Jesus, and God's will be done. And I'm thankful that I did. Had no complications afterwards, and I know a lot of people had different judgments about it. Groups, you go one way, this way, or go with this other group, go that way. But I had to make a decision on my own, and that's one of the times that I made a big decision on my own to do what I felt was necessary for me. But in life, we know we we all offer different opportunities. Grow with this group or grow with that group. But as we grow in knowledge of our Lord, well, we know that we have to use our own mind. So that's what I'm saying. That which for all of us that we stay clear of have clear going on, and stick to what you think is right, what you believe is right, if it's right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
No,
And
and
that's
you're
exactly what we're talking about, right? You have choice, right? It's not
Yes,
just following, it's not following for the sake to follow, right? You can
that's
definitely make your decisions this way or that way, and that's
that's right.
perfect.
Yes, sir.
Yep, great. And thank you for sharing. Did
Listen,
Annie though? If you're talking, you're muted, Annie.
Maybe she had to leave.
Okay, maybe not. Going once, going twice. All right. Did Marie or Gary have anything to close us out?
It was just awesome, and I enjoy all the input from everyone. Everyone is taking something different away, and it's just an awesome training, I think. That's all I would add. Let's
Yes.
keep growing.
Yep. Keep growing. Join week, same time, same place. What about yourself, Jerry?
If you know someone that would like to attend, but you feel they may be a little behind, just reach out to whoever invited you and we'll get you a recording to share with them so that they can catch up. But definitely invite some people, as many people as you can think, because this is applicable to everyone. And we look forward to seeing you next week so we can move on to the next level of awareness.
Yes, indeed. Take care.
Laura.